Hi, I'm Chad Lawson. This is Subscription Boxes, and you're watching Verbose Mode. Welcome to Verbose Mode, the show dedicated to learning to learn and the freedom to fail. I'm your host, Chad Lawson. Today we are going to be talking about various hacker and maker subscription services. In the last episode, I was showing off a couple of different alternate ways I could have been doing the internet radio project, and I specifically mentioned a hacker boxes option and something in Adafruit's AdaBox service. So I received some questions asking to know more about the various services, and so I thought this would be a good time to talk about the ones I've mentioned on the show in the past, as well as I think at least one that I haven't. So I just want to take this time and talk about that. I've got three in particular I want to talk about today. Box by Fruit, Hacker Boxes, and Boldport. Each of them has their own particular strengths and weaknesses, in my opinion, and so I'm going to be talking about each of them in terms of how difficult they are for somebody who's just getting started, how good the directions are for each of them, what kind of variety of the various types of projects, how much they cost, how often you receive them, as well as any particular opinions I may have developed about these over time. We're going to start by talking about AdaBox. I'm going to bring this out. So one of the things I really like about AdaBox, first off, is the packaging. Let's go to the overhead camera. Each of the AdaBoxes comes in this nice little laser cut box. There is a outer box for packaging, for shipping. I mean, this one then is what you pull out of that. That way, this should remain nice and pristine in transit. I have had one damaged from getting kind of tossed around a little bit much. But within the actual box, there's the different colored sheet, and each one is different. I have a number of the different sheets from the various boxes over time. This sheet then also talks about what's in each of the different projects, or this particular quarter's box, and then guides, links to the various guides. Rather than taking this thing apart too much further, instead I'm just pull out some of the different components that were in one of them. This is from box number 3, I believe, talking about the Internet of Things. One of the things to start off by talking is that each of these components that they give you, these are curated components typically, although as of more recently, not all from Adafruit's own collection, but they are a collection of various components curated specifically to talk about this particular box's theme. So talking about Internet of Things, they gave us one of their feathers, their own version of a microcontroller. It's very Arduino compatible, but each one has a specific purpose. They all have a micro USB connector for programming, reset button, a connector for a lithium polymer battery, and then some specific, I don't know what to call it, gimmick or hook for this particular one. This is a Huzzah. This is based off of the ESP, the SPIF. Well, we'll just go with that. The ESP-based chip. It has Wi-Fi capability. So while it is a standard microcontroller, it's got GPIO pins. This one can connect to the internet over Wi-Fi. This also then came with this particular one. It's a small little OLED. What they call for these particular devices are called their feathers. So they call these their feather wings. They simply stack right on top of the feather. Now, typically you buy any one of these from Adafruit, they're going to come without the actual headers on them. Specifically with the AdaBox options, they give you breadboards, solderless breadboards, and the components come with the headers pre-soldered. And in the case of the feathers themselves, they have these stackable headers. So not only can this then plug into the breadboard, but then you can stack one of the wings directly on top of the component. So these boxes, the AdaBoxes, are extremely easy to just pick up and go. Uh, if you've ever looked at Adafruit and you go onto their Learn tab, there are just tens of thousands of really great articles specifically on how to do a project. If you look through it and you've seen something that looks familiar from one of my episodes, guess where I probably got it from? I was probably inspired from something I saw on one of the Adafruit websites. But all of these particular Ada boxes have great directions, great information, and what I like also then about this is these components. If you've ever, for me, playing with Legos as a kid, that's what this reminds me of. Whenever you got a Lego kit, it came with nice little crystal clear directions on how to assemble whatever the box was supposed to be, whether it was a space station, an X-wing, what have you. But then after that, you could take the pieces apart and make whatever you wanted. With some of the more modern Legos, they seem to have moved a little further away from the traditional one block fits all type of mentality, but you can still, after you've built whatever it was you were intending to, for me, the best part of any sort of Lego was taking it apart and then finding other ways to assemble those same blocks. Same thing with these. These are all done solderless so that you can simply take them out of your existing project, reprogram them, repurpose them. Now, I have two of these double-headed feathers with Huzzah chip on them because there was the first one, or no, I'm sorry, it was the second one, which was the Internet of Things, and then another one for music, both of which use the same component. So I wound up with two of these boards. I'm not upset about that at all. I really enjoy that. So I'm not, but I could see how some people might be a little frustrated with, well, wait a minute, I'm paying for this and I just got the same component twice when I already have one of these. So I like the fact that that they're not shy about giving you a second one so that you don't have to have box 2 in order to do box 4. But at the same point, I can understand some of the complaints that you might not want to keep repeating getting the same pieces over and over again. AdaBox comes once a quarter, so you're getting them every 3 months, and it costs $60 per quarter. So it's kind of got a fairly high price tag. But because it's such great directions, they're so easy to use and get started. These are a great kit. This is a great subscription service for families that have young children that are learning to become engineers, or for anybody who's just wanting to get started on with this. The main feature of this, I think, is just how easy it is to get started with and how the directions are crystal clear. On a side note, I absolutely love the packaging for each of these. So I'm going to put this one aside. But I wanted to kind of go ahead and give a quick little summary. So for AdaBox, I think the difficulty to getting started with any one of these is particularly low. The directions are absolutely fantastic. Variety of projects. We've gone from Internet of Things, making things move in robotics, music, CircuitPython, but it's been wonderful, just the wide range of projects. As I mentioned, it's $60 per quarter. So the next one then I want to talk about is Hacker Boxes. This is one of the other ones that I mentioned in the last episode when I was talking about the internet radio. This was one of the other alternatives on how I could have done this. So first of all, let's talk about the packaging. It's not very exciting at all. You get a simple box, and there are various other sizes, but this is not the most exciting thing in the world. Within it then, each of the projects comes with a card about not only what the actual project is that you're going to be dealing with, in this case, biosensing of your heart, your pulse, etc., but specifically then on what is the component, what is the star of this particular project, as well as some additional information. The boards themselves are absolutely beautiful. Actually, I should go back for a second. So then if you go onto the website, it has information, you just follow along. This is a little bit more of an advanced particular kit. So this is the BioSense one. I also then want to show off, this is the Jam Box. This is what you saw in the last episode as a possible alternative to the internet radio. So they build their own custom boards. Actually, I wanted to go over to this side for this one because this is talking about the chip in it. This is talking about the individual max drivers for driving the 8x8 grids, as well as then for handling of audio. So they have breakouts for the major components. So the nice thing is that you get some really good directions. You get some really interesting projects. I love the variety involved in this, from music to biosensing. See what else I can remember. There's one on cryptography. Um, One of the very first ones I got, and the reason I learned about this is that I attended DEF CON 25, the hacker conference in Las Vegas, and there was a gentleman down at the tables as you are. I was involved in one of the minor contest, not minor contest anymore, it's become huge, called Darknet. And the badges that they gave you, you had to assemble yourself. So there were soldering stations everywhere, and people were jamming up the soldering stations, assembling their badges. Gentleman two down from me was also assembling his badge, if you will, that came as one of the hacker boxes. They specifically did one box all about the idea of the electronic badge. That happens to be everywhere in various technology conferences, specifically hacker conferences. So each box has a very specific theme, a very specific project. Now the good news is, and I'm going to start with this one here. So this one is off of biosensing. This particular microcontroller, as you can see, is sitting on a set of headers. So I can simply remove this component. Each of the amplifiers, which is the entire theme of this, is all about op amps, and each of these op amps could be removed from this, as could the actual microcontroller. So for a lot of the particular kits, the component that the entire thing is about can be removed after the fact. I use the metaphor of Legos from before with AdaBox. So I can, for some of these, like with the op amp, that was the star of the BioSense chip, I can remove those chips and use them in other things. Well, op amps are actually remarkably cheap, and the microcontroller isn't that expensive. The ESP that is the star of this one did not come with any headers, so this is soldered in here. I'm not getting this out anytime soon. So some of them you can easily quickly take back out whatever the star component is and use it in other things. But I love the detail they put into each of the kits, even if the packaging is not terribly exciting. The way they assemble it is obviously done with a lot of care. The work they put into designing these boards, the emphasis they put into a particular component and giving you not just, oh, here, play with this particular component, but to give you an entire experience around it. Op amps are used for tons of stuff. I think it's absolutely ingenious that they use this one for doing hookups to EKG for reading your heart, EEG for reading brainwave activity, EMG for reading muscular contraction, like if you were to do prosthetic work. This is a great place to use this, but op amps are used and have been used all over. They're almost as ubiquitous as the 555 timer chip. So they've chosen one particular board that has a wide range of different things you can learn the same concepts on, and so that's what I really like about that. As far as for the costs and so, consider HackerBox to be something more of a medium difficulty. Some of these projects kits are a little harder to put together. They're time consuming. I do a lot of travel on the road, and when I'm in a hotel far away from my family, I like to have something to do. So I've been taking along any one of these particular subscription boxes, and the hacker boxes have pretty much killed an evening for me. Pretty good directions. They're all on Instructables.com, which is both nice in that it's a nice popular website, easy to get onto. Some of the directions are easier to follow than the others. Good, like I said, good variety of projects from cryptography, biosensing, music, through streaming internet. Great. To subscribe, it's $44 a month. So for each one of these boxes will arrive if you're a subscriber at $44. Now, if you go onto the website afterward and go to hackerboxes.com to buy any one of these, the prices go up after that. So love them. Absolutely great kit. I highly recommend it. And then last up, what I have is BoldPort. Now this one has its own challenges. So Boldport is a subscription service out of the UK, which means that when you get that email telling you that it's on the way, you might not see it for a couple of weeks. But I have to show off from the overhead. I brought two particular projects out just because I loved their names relative to this. The Lady and the Gent. I'm going to go ahead and open up this so you can see where it has the Gent. So let's start by talking about the packaging. I find the packaging for these to be absolutely gorgeous. They'll arrive, most of them tend to arrive in black plastic, black vinyl, overseas mailing envelopes, and then you open it up and you'll see any one of these boxes inside. The packaging then inside, oh, I'm sorry, I also brought out the cuddle for this one. I didn't have the box on hand for the Lady. So these are a couple of different projects, and what you quickly are going to see is these are absolutely gorgeous. These are these little circuit boards. This happens to be a breadboard compatible microcontroller, so this is essentially a breadboard based Arduino. This is the Lady. It is, and I don't have a battery out here. All it is a number of LEDs that light up and this nice little cut mirror for it. And in this case, it's another one that has a little blinky. This one's not finished, and I'll get to that in a particular moment because this one came a while ago. So what I really love about this subscription service, it comes at a nice regular interval of once a month. The projects themselves are absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I'm going to go back to the Lady here just because I want to show this off. I love the fact that it's not just soldering together a bunch of LEDs and having something that blinks. This is not just a circuit board. This is essentially a piece of art, which works both for it and against it. Because, like I said, I find it absolutely beautiful, but the directions to tell you how to solder together these legs, let's see if I can get this up here. You're taking two resistors and you're putting a little drop of solder to link the two resistor legs together and then attaching them to the board and then bending them into this shape, as well as taking and the directions didn't actually tell me to hold on to some additional spare wire from the LEDs, or for the from the LEDs to make the antenna. So my antenna are a little shorter because I ended up using smaller pieces than I would have if it specifically stated, please make sure to keep this around. And similarly with the Gent, the body, as you can see, is the circuit board, and this one was designed to be standing up. The problem, and the reason I haven't finished this, is what I really don't like is the directions. For each one of them has a simple infographic where it shows you kind of the idea of what you're supposed to be putting together with the board. For some of them, even including the Lady, that can be handy. The Lady also had a fan. One of the subscribers put together her own assembly video, and what was absolutely stunning about this is because the Lady itself has, let's see if I get to this nicely, has this almost bug collector like cardboard for it, and the mounting for this is all designed around the same idea of like if you were doing bug collecting back in, for me that was I think junior high, we did a class on that. But the video that this fan did, that the subscriber did, it continued that theme, and so it had this nice little where it would show one of those little pinned pieces of paper and what that was, the LEDs, etc., and then went through and did all the assembly. Gorgeous, gorgeous. But not all. But the little infographic that you get is not, for me, always useful. I'm going to try to get in close to this. This is an example from the Gent where you're taking two resistors and soldering them together at a right angle. Let's see how well I can do this. Bending the legs out at a right angle and then trying to shape them into feet and solder them. This is the one that I actually did, and I'm really not proud of it. So what I ended up doing was taking another pair of resistors, in this case from just a a pile of spare resistors I had and trying to do it over here. Not happy with this one either. So I haven't come up with a particularly good way to do it. The community is based out of Slack. So if you like Slack, you're going to be really happy with being able to interact with the community in there. If you're like me and Slack is not your friend, well then you're not at all going to be happy. And that's really what the main downside of this is. I really don't like the way the community is put together, and I don't like the way the directions come. I think the directions are pretty. I just don't think they're as step by step or as helpful. The other only complaint I have about BoldPort's projects is the exact same as their main advantage is also their main drawback. This is gorgeous. This is art, but that's what it is. It's art. Did I learn anything from assembling this together other than I can get really frustrated trying to solder resistors together to be legs for a piece of art? Not really. Some of them have a particular thing you're supposed to learn. There was one early on was the cordwood puzzle. Amazing project. It was absolutely fantastic for reverse engineering and troubleshooting it. So some of them, like the ones you see here, are much more artistic and there's nothing else to it. The Cuddle, it's art and it's a microcontroller. This is a full working Arduino I can put onto a breadboard. But the Lady and the Gent aren't much more than art. There isn't really a great deal to learn from it other than the fun of putting it together. So much like some of those Lego kits, as I'm going to stick with that analogy, where you get the 300, and I'm making up a number here, piece thing for the White House. Once you've assembled it, that would be too small for the White House, wouldn't it? But some number of pieces, you put together the White House, or you put together an X-Wing, or you put together the Death Star, you put that someplace and you're never taking that apart again. And that's what the case with the BoldPort. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And when you can figure out what you're doing with the resistors, very fun to put together. I absolutely love this collection. I'm not going to stop anytime soon. I've been with them almost since the beginning. I have no intention of leaving, but there is that one downside. So kind of to summarize my thoughts on this one, BoldPort, I consider it to be a fairly high difficulty. I don't really care for the directions for the most part. For the particular projects where somebody else, one of the other members who got it very early on, has then put together their own version of the directions, those I think are wonderful. Medium on variety, I say that because while the range can be interesting, a lot of them are more artistic than actual learning. The price, by the way, is £19. And no, I'm not doing the math on what that conversion is. And it's done monthly that you receive it. However, they bill at £19 in 3-month installments. So you're paying for it quarterly, receiving it monthly. So that puts it a little more expensive than AdaBox in terms of you're paying, well, roughly £60 per quarter. Depending on the conversion rate, means you're paying more than you would for AdaBox, but you're getting 3 projects in the same time as you would get 1 box from Adafruit. So that's kind of my take on these particular kits. I find them all to be absolutely wonderful. There are 3 different examples of what you can do to learn from. If you have any particular questions, let me know. As always, I'm going to have in the show notes a link to the upcoming maker fairs around the world, and if you find one near you, please, I encourage you to go to it. It is considered to be the world's greatest show and tell. If you definitely go to one, find a maker that's doing something of interest and ask them about it. In case you hadn't figured out from this show, makers love to talk about what they're doing. Also, if you have any questions about either any of these subscription boxes, stop in and ask. I'd be happy to answer them. If you have any particular opinions, go ahead and comment in our various forums. I'd love to hear your take on these particular ones. And if you have a subscription service that you are using that I haven't mentioned here, I'd love to hear about that as well. We've got a couple other upcoming related things. This has triggered a couple other episodes, so I've got a couple other things related to AdaBox and one of the other ones in the near future. If you like the show, please go on to Patreon. We've got some upcoming projects coming up so that you can either patronize or sponsor the show in general or very specific projects I have coming up. Either way, I would greatly appreciate it. So until next time, fail again, fail better.